many people assume that the Bible simply can't be trusted, and if you can't trust the Bible,
kinda loud there,
then
buddy.
you can't trust Christianity, because the whole of the Christian message comes from the teaching of the Bible.
Sure.
And that was my view. I thought the Bible was just full of myths. And then I thought again. And
Oh, okay.
You thought,
Not again.
I like that. I thought it was rubbish, then I thought again. And what did you think?
Voila! It was no longer rubbish.
Yeah, like, how did that happen?
Amazing. Well, he's going to tell us.
I want
I'm
to tell you
sure.
why I changed my mind. For
Okay.
a start, I've discovered that the Bible
Whoa, please
is...
don't do a close-up. I'm not saying I'm the most beautiful man to ever live, but Jesus Christ, sir. We don't need the punch shot. We don't need to punch in.
Oppressive close-up.
We don't need to punch into you.
absolutely rooted in real history. So you don't just
Okay.
have to look to the Bible.
Nice.
You can look to
How do
other
you know that?
ancient historians for
right.
references to Jesus, the Roman historian Pliny, the Roman historian Tacitus, Jewish historian Josephus.
When did they
all
live? When do those people live? Yeah, historians have mentioned Jesus for thousands of years.
All right, so I mean, like, atheists have gone. I mean, we've gone into this. You know, like, you go and look at it. Josephus lived like 100 years after Jesus was supposed to live, or 50 years, or something like that. And I mean, like, you go look at these references, these historical references of Jesus, and usually it's like one little line or something like that. There's like a handful. There's like a little smattering of historians that have like these little tiny, insignificant mentions of Jesus.
it's been a major religion for thousands of years. Of course, it's gonna be mentioning.
But I mean,
this.
like, if Jesus really did the stuff in the Bible, like, there's nothing in those secular historical accounts that's like about Jesus' miracles, or he healed the sick, or he fucking did any of that shit. Like, none of that's even in there.
So even if someone mentioned Jesus, how does that prove any of those things are true?
All right, so like they say, Josephus mentioned Jesus. Okay, so here's like a thing here. So this is he wrote a book, The Antiquities of the Jews. It's Flavius Josephus.
Wow.
It was written in 93 to 94 AD.
Flavius was not woke.
93 to 94 AD. Well, he was a Jew. So it was about, it was about.
I know. I'm being
Whatever.
facetious. It's fine.
Um, I think he was a Jew. I don't know. So let's see. What did he fucking? Modern scholarship has largely acknowledged the authenticity of the second reference to Jesus in the Antiquities, found in Book 20, Chapter 9, which mentions the brother of Jesus who was called Christ, whose name was James. Okay, so we're adding a new character to the Bible. If you're gonna go with the Josephus one, you gotta realize that it wasn't even Jesus who was the Christ; it was his brother James.
James was doing it, man. Fucking
We've
walking on
been
water,
worshiping the wrong Christ this whole time. It was James
water
Christ.
into wine, feeding 40,000 people, whatever the fuck it was.
The name's Christ. James Christ. Da-na-da-na. Like, what the fuck? So basically, like, there's a scant few references to Jesus in these historical documents that were written after Jesus was supposed to have lived. There's barely anything about him in there.
Yet again, no evidence to back up any of those
And
claims.
that's why there's, like, actually robust debate as to whether or not Jesus was an actual historical figure or if he was just a contrived figure.
Even if he was, it doesn't prove anything.
Right. It doesn't prove any of his miracles or any of that. There's people walking around today that claim to be able to heal the sick and do
Yeah.
miracles. Most people don't believe in them.
People have claimed supernatural powers. People have claimed that
I
they
can
have,
speak to the dead. I can do this. I can do that.
yeah,
like,
it's all quackery. It's all bullshit.
even if there was a Jesus, he was basically just like the John Edwards of his time or something like that, or the Charles Manson.
refer to the life of Jesus, teaching, miracles. Josephus even refers to the resurrection of Jesus. So it's rooted in history, and
All right, let's see if that's true.
So it's rooted in history. What does that mean? It's rooted in history. That statement on its face is meaningless because almost virtually anything you would just speak about is rooted in history. The Big Bang is rooted in history. When the last time CJ took a shit is rooted in history. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. Yet again, it's just it's a total fucking duck and it's a total fucking dodge of anything of substance. Saying that you read it again and then looked at it in a new light and then had some revelation is a personal experience claim. It's saying that you now have decided, without any good reason, to believe something.
Blah, 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 blah. There's some serious question as to whether or not Josephus actually mentioned the resurrection. It seems like that might have been added later by Christians.
So it's a disingenuous statement. Or potentially is.
Potentially. I mean, we don't have time to do all the research right now.
Yeah,
but,
we can't fact check every fucking liar on the internet.
It's been looked into before by atheists. Like, this is not a new argument. This is not something that, like, oh shit, what about all these secular like, it's been looked into. Like, most
it's
of them
not a
have,
gotcha moment.
Most of these have these little tiny references to him. It's like he's not treated as a big figure in any of these fucking his contemporary historians. Like, when we're contemporary for the time. Like, Jesus does not seem to have been a major political or notable figure at the time, if he in fact
and
existed.
I mean, we have volumes and volumes on Roman history, which is even more ancient for in a lot of respects.
And very like there, you can find like a handful that reference something that might have been Jesus.
Yeah,
and that's it. And so that's not. There's not this great. And I mean, like, there's parts of the Bible that are just outright ahistorical, like the idea that the Egyptians kept Jewish slaves. No evidence of that other than in the Bible.
I mean, the Bible makes so many ridiculous claims. We'd be here
if you want to go to
yeah, I mean, we'd be here all night.
You can go to Skeptic's Annotated Bible. There's a huge section on historicity that shows all of the times where the Bible contradicts what we actually know about history.
Oh,
the Gospels themselves.
It's huge.
Are written by people writing around about 35 years after the events they describe. Most experts would say Mark was the first of the New Testament Gospels, probably the late.
Most experts would say that.
Most experts. Who are these experts? And what are they experts in?
So he's saying, they were all written like at best 35 years after he lived.
And that's not even true. We just cited, wasn't it 90 years after? Supposedly the time of Christ.
Well, it depends on what you think the time of Christ was. There's dispute about that too.
You know what I mean? So yet again, we run to another thing that hasn't even been decided. So,
but I mean, like, at the very least,
even if
it was 35 years afterwards. Even if it was, let's grant him the premise. It's 35 years later. It's not 35 years later in the age of, video and audio documentation and stuff like that. It's 35 years later in the word of mouth world, where someone can just go to you and be like, I once saw a man feed a giant group of people with only two fish and a loaf of bread.
Yeah, you're right. Let's grant him the 35. Let's grant him 1 year after. Let's say that someone wrote about it 1 year after, 1 minute after Jesus ascended to heaven, someone grabs a fucking goddamn, I don't know what they use then. They fucking chisel it in stone like Jesus went up to heaven. That was crazy. LOL. Let's say that happened. Yeah. What about now? Why can't it be revealed now? What's stopping it now from being demonstrated to us? What's stopping it? I'm here. I'm willing to believe. Show yourself now, Jesus. Come on out. I'm waiting. Come on. Jesus!
Blasphemy, Scotty.
Jesus!
Blasphemy.
Blasphemy.
You're a blasphemer.
60s or so AD. So there would have been plenty around, given that Jesus died in the early 30s, who could have said, no, it wasn't like that. They would have seen him with their own eyes, heard him with their own ears. And the gospel writers were...
Wait, they would have seen him with their own eyes and heard him with their own ears after 35 years after his lifetime?
Yeah, how did that happen?
I mean, like, that's kind of a stretch.
Or maybe he meant they existed, so they wrote about it 35 years later, so they had actually seen him.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what he's getting at. But so they saw this amazing shit, but then 35 years later, as old men, they decided to write it down.
Yeah, why did they write it down then? That's what I'm saying. That makes no sense. Let's say
one time I knew this fella by the name of Jesus, and I seen him do some crazy tricks.
If you were one of Jesus' apostles, and he demonstrated all this shit to you, like, you'd be sold for life. That'd be the only thing you ever talk about. Dude, I met this dude named Jesus, and it's a crazy fucking story. Let me tell you. It wouldn't be some shit where you're like, that was pretty crazy. I'll just go their separate ways, do their bullshit. 35 years later, they're kind of thinking about it.
Reminiscent about, hey, remember that guy Jesus?
Yeah, let's write that down now. I mean, why does it make any fucking sense?
Either eyewitnesses themselves, so Matthew, who wrote the first gospel, John the fourth, actually followed Jesus. They were amongst the first disciples.
And how do you know that?
Luke, who's very interesting, he tells us at the beginning of his gospel that he went to great efforts to make sure that what he was writing was based on eyewitness testimony.
A liar would say that too, though.
It's just so circular. The Bible is true because the Bible said it's true. Jesus exists because the Bible said that it's real. And the one little shred of it is that it's historically documented, which is really not. Or at best, it's extremely ambiguous and vague, and only alludes to the fact that Jesus had a brother who was actually supposedly, according to you, what you just read, the Messiah.
He's claiming to be a very serious historian. Now, you could say he was just lying to persuade people to follow.
I mean,
that's more plausible.
I mean, that wouldn't be that unusual. I mean, like, let's
someone lied to convince someone
hold on.
something else.
Let me just ask you, like, point blank, what's more likely? Someone lied to convince people of the truth of some like crazy doctrine, or there actually was a guy who walked on water and healed the sick and cast out demons and all this other stuff? Like, which is a more likely, and it was the Son of God. Like, which is more likely to have happened based on like what we know about reality? I mean, it's just,
definitely the Son of God angle, dude.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, totally. Even though
I just defeated my own argument. Yeah, of course that's the most likely.
I mean, even though no one liked that.
I mean, who's ever heard of someone lying?
Oh, except then what is it? You know, a few hundred years later, someone called Muhammad comes along. Oh, then suddenly there's just another wrinkle to that story.
Well, he's a liar. He's a liar. That one's a lie. That one's a lie.
Yeah, I mean, not only does Christianity presume so much, it presumes of all the other religions that have existed before and since that it's the correct one.
Yeah, these are
based on what?
This is the one group of people because they wrote it down. They knew him and they wrote it down.
Because someone mentions someone in this book. Therefore, that book is true. Therefore, everything they say is true. Therefore, every claim they made, even though it's not been demonstrated, is also true.
Absolutely.
And then you should believe it. Because in that book, they say that it happened. Wow, great fucking reasoning. We just picked that apart in like 5 fucking seconds. If you fucking didn't believe and then flipped the script suddenly, either you're A, retarded, or B, full of shit.
But why lie when...
You're almost laughing.
What you're saying.
Why lie?
Is this a fucking joke video? If it wasn't on the site it was on, and people were actually paying money to host that, you have to seriously consider this guy. I mean, he must be making money off the site or something. I don't know, or I don't even understand this.
Hold on. Let him talk. All
right, fine.
You only gave him 4 seconds before you interject. Come on. Give him a decent chunk of time to get his case out. Come on.
Matters very much. You're claiming that Jesus is the truth. Why base it all on a lie? Especially...
What? Okay, I guess I got to go back on what I just said, because that was a weird statement. If you're claiming Jesus is the truth, why base it all on a lie? Well, couldn't you could like literally say about any of the religions? I mean, like, you know, Muhammad claimed to be the truth. Well, why would he lie if he was claiming to tell the truth? Because liars claim to tell the truth.
Of course.
That's what a lie is.
Why is it so far-fetched to believe that somewhere along the line in human development, some people heard other stories from other people and other groups, and then stole from those stories, and then made up their own bullshit. And it just so happens that they won the bullshit lotto. They fucking ding, 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 Christianity. That's the bullshit story people want to go with in this part of the world. And then some other people in other parts of the world said, no, it's the sun. And then some other people come along and say, no, it's actually Buddha. Oh, and then some other people come along and say, no, it's actually this bullshit. It's like, it's just the bullshit lottery. And these religions won it.
Given that most of the early Christians suffered greatly for their faith, and a number of them died. Many people in human history have died for things that are not true.
Yeah, well, you know who else died? The followers of the Heaven's Gate cult died. So therefore, that must be true.
Yeah,
everything they taught.
How does someone dying equate to that? They're right.
I mean, you know who else was persecuted? David Koresh. He was persecuted. He was killed. So I guess his doctrine was also true.
And according to him, some of this, like the 7 seals, right, were beginning to open. So
yeah.
If you follow Scripture, then that's saying that the end of the world had come.
Yeah, I mean, like, so
the world hasn't ended yet. So I mean, are we still waiting on that seal?
What's that other guy that poisoned all the people with the Kool-Aid? Jim Jones.
Jim Jones.
Yeah, like, so his followers were persecuted, and they died for what they believed in, so I guess that must be true. How many people have died in the name of Allah for Islam? How many people have strapped suicide vests to themselves and gone and blown up innocent people and themselves in the name of Allah? So that must be true, too, because if people are willing to die for something, that clearly means it's true. The only problem is that all of those different philosophies, religions, whatever you want to call them, are in direct contradiction. They can't all be true.
People are willing
to die. So obviously,
and kill.
People dying and killing for something doesn't make it true. If it did, then all those would be true, and they're not. They can't be.
We've covered literally people. 2 guys had a dispute over James Brown's height, and it ended with one of them murdering the other one.
Yeah, a human being was willing to
mean
throw down and die and kill over the height of James Brown.
Does that mean the guy that was willing to murder was just so right that the only course of action?
No, it
left?
means the guy that was willing to get murdered.
Oh, you're right.
You know, because he died for his beliefs.
But how can that be?
Wait a minute.
Can they both be right?
They must both be right about James Brown's height. It must be like his height must just be a superposition. It's like the quantum entanglement. No, you can't comprehend it easily. We need to get some fucking Einstein-level mathematicians on this shit to figure it out.
I guess let this guy finish up. Let's see if there's anything else.
But would you die for what you knew wasn't true because you'd invented it? But the main reason...
Obviously, some people are willing to do that.
Yes.
We've just given you 1,000 examples of people doing just that.
Why I'm convinced the Bible can be taken seriously and have changed my mind is because of the person of Jesus Christ. I read it, and I was bowled over by this very remarkable man, the most remarkable man who's ever lived. It was as if he just walked off the pages and into my life. And if you've got questions about Jesus Christ, if you've got questions about whether you can trust the Bible, the best thing you can do is read one of the New Testament accounts, Gospels, for yourself. And if you do, like me...
I actually agree with that, because most people a lot of people I know anyway, that became atheists, it was from sitting down and reading the Bible. So, yeah, go ahead and do it.
I would say the best...
I'll throw down on that. Yeah, go read the Bible.
You can do that if you want, but I'd say the best method is just to look at all the available evidence for every claim that's made to you and evaluate it based on that. Hey, if reading the Bibles, that should be part of it. I mean, I agree with you, but it's also looking at other options and looking at other opinions and saying, what does reality actually tell us about these things? And is there any real good reason to take the Bible seriously?
You'll have all sorts of questions, and I'd encourage you to find a Christianity Explored course near you and go and ask your questions. All questions are welcome.
Okay, if you say so.